Hello and welcome to my factions only metagame tier list. So we're just going to be going over the classes that I would argue are in the metagame for factions only. So what is factions only? Factions only is just playing the game with Guild Wars factions, so you have access to core and faction skills as well as the factions PvE skills. So this will be from the point of view of heroes. So all of the classes I have with me right now, I'll just kind of line them up, are what I would consider the best classes, aside from Monk. Monk is good, but it's not nearly as good as like a Necro healer or even an Ellie healer. Alright, so let's start with the class I'm playing, Rit. So this will be S tier at the top of this ramp. Here, let me flag someone. Let me flag the Monk down here. Alright, so the top of the ramp is S tier, middle is A tier, and this is B tier. Now this is the ranking, this is excluding Warrior, Assassin, and Ranger, because as heroes, they're all C tier. The reason for that is the Assassin dies a lot. If you give it dagger spam, it's not really doing that much damage. You pretty much want Ellies and Mesmers and Necros and Rits. That's pretty much what the best classes are, but I'll go into that in a second. Warrior has damage problems, it has energy regen problems, so even when you make it a caster, it runs out of energy really fast. And then Ranger has energy problems, and it's kind of like somewhere in between the Assassin and the Warrior, where it has better energy than the Warrior and better survivability than the Assassin, but it has worse energy than the Assassin, so Ranger is quite bad in this like as a hero, in this, within this restriction of only one account, or faction. So, alright, let's start with Rit. Rit is easy S tier, so it's easily one of the best classes. So I'm going to actually flag my Rit, which is actually this character, but I just changed her name so she can use her as a mercenary. So here's what Rit can do. Rit essentially has 3 good builds that I'm aware of. I haven't even experimented with, like, for example, Grasping was Kurong or like other things, but the 3 builds that I'm aware of that are good, 2 of them are Soul Twisting and 1 of them is Signet of Spirits. So the first good build is something everyone should recognize, with some additions, some changes. Soul Twisting with Shelter and Union, and then optional displacements or Earthbind, whatever you want to run, or you can just remove the 3rd spirit. Armor of Unfeeling, Boon of Creation. I use Mighty Was Verizon for the energy and the armor. It makes it, as you can see here, this has, ping that, wait, team is off. 68 energy on a on a ritualist and plus 15 armor is pretty good. That's basically a shield plus like a staff that has an impossible amount of energy, so not bad. It has res because it's always, like, when I actually do hard mode, I flag it behind my team, so if anyone dies, it can just res with like no pressure and nothing attacking it. But Soul Twisting is S tier. Signet of Spirits is S tier. Signet of Spirits build you would probably run is like Signet of Spirits. Blood Song, you would run Communing, then you would splash the rest into Spawning Power. And you could run like Pain and like Shadow Song and Painful Bond and all that. So, it's just like in the actual metagame, that's easily S tier. And then this build right here is S tier as well. So it's almost like an Ellie build because you have like your 2 enchantments. So it's almost like this is like your attunement. And then this is like a damage attunement. Like, I actually love this build. You have Dark Escape for tank. I have a +5/+5 staff for +10 armor. I have +10 armor while enchanted, so I'm 80 base armor. I run in with Dark Escape to take half damage. What I do is I place Destruction, I Siphon, Ancestor's Rage, I blow up Destruction, I re-Destruction, Siphon, wait until this comes back so that the Destruction can cook, and then just keep doing this. Ancestor's Rage, blow it up, re-Destruction, blow it up. So this actually does quite a lot of damage. It hits nearby an area from Destruction, nearby from Rupture. Rupture hits really high, inflicts blind for 11 seconds. You can maintain blind on a group of enemies. Ancestor's Rage is just filler damage, that's good. Every time you create a Destruction, it hits 5 dudes for damage. This is easily an S tier build. Within this rule set, it's definitely better than the build my Ellie runs. It hits so many targets. It's like you literally have an infinite, like a low cooldown Destruction. And this hits cooldown, or this hits its cap at like 6 seconds, so As long as this is alive for 6 seconds, you can get 150 armor ignoring damage every 6 seconds. So that's why I always use Spirit Siphon, Ancestor's Rage first, and then I blow it up. So it at least has like 3 or 4 seconds of being alive to deal, at least like 100 armor ignoring damage. Alright, so that's Rit. What do we got? What is my F1? Necro. Alright, Necro, I'm going to put an S tier as well with all of its minions. So Necro has like 2 really good builds. It has two good builds that I'm aware of, by the way. Like, now that I can run 2 Necros, I'm going to be able to experiment more with Necro. It very likely has, I want to say, like 4 to 5 builds. Because I think Icy Veins is in this game. I could be wrong, though, but that might be Prophecy's skill. I can't remember off the top of my head. But Bip is easily S tier. Bip Healer is very strong. The Soul Reaping refills its energy. It can drop Protective was KOI to heal the whole party. If life ever dies, it heals every spirit within range. Or not every spirit, every ally within range. So that's insane. Like, if you have, it heals minions. So like, it heals all these minions when it dies. Spirit Transfer, which, like, this is why it has life. It uses Spirit Transfer to spike heal for like 200 health. Spirit Light to spike heal for 150. Mend Body and Soul to remove a bunch of conditions. Weapon of Shadow for anti-physical. If there's like 3 warriors attacking like the monk, he'll just throw it on the monk. The monk starts blinding them. It starts tanking them. It has res. I probably shouldn't have res because Bips already lower their health, so Flesh of My Flesh probably isn't wise. Maybe res sig would be better, but it's not bad. And then on my other Necro, I have a very basic Minion Master build. This build is good because it can get a really powerful Flesh Golem, a bunch of DPSers. The Bone Fiends have the best DPS aside from Flesh Golem. Vampiric Horrors that heal the Minion Master. The Minion Master is tanky because of Dark Bond. Can contribute to damage when it doesn't have minions with Deathly Swarm, which is like, it helps, but it's not like amazing, but it's not bad either. And then it also can heal its minions with Blood Bond and, of course, Blood of the Master. And we have 16 death magic on it, which is like 6 blood, so some investment. What's the other thing? Oh yeah, it's armor. So the nice thing about Minion Masters is it can get just 15 armor as long as it has 5 minions. So it just always has 15 armor, it takes like 25% damage, and it's quite tanky, so it's really good once it gets going, because it just, enemies will constantly attack minions and just waste enemies' time, so it's pretty strong. Next we have Mesmer. Mesmer is not where you think it's going to go. I'm just going to say that. Alright, so where is it? What is it? Where are you? No, that's you. Are you F2? Okay, you're F2. Alright. Alright, so you go up there. Alright, Mesmer I'm actually putting at A tier. So this might be a shock to people. They might be like, no way, Mesmer's S tier. It is in the metagame for sure, but in this format, it's not even close to S tier. Alright, so here's a good example of like a strong build. Let me just go over the domination. I have every domination skill except for like Psychic Distraction, which is terrible in PvE. So, alright, you have Backfire. So I'll just go through these like very fast. Backfire is fine, but you want AoE damage, so, and you don't really want hexes too much because they can get removed. It really depends on how many hexes you're running, but Backfire can be good. But when you're running Psychic Instability, it like kind of shuts it down. My Ellie has a ton of knockdown, so it's not going to be going off, so it's just really not that good. There's circumstances where it could be, like in small team areas, but it's like a decent skill. Complicate is actually pretty good. Cry of Frustration is amazing. So you have the main skills you have are like Cry of Frustration, Empathy, Energy Surge, Overload, Power Spike is okay, Shatter Hex, and a Natural Signet. Some skills that are like not as good, like Energy Burn is okay, but it's on such a long cooldown that I don't really run it for 10 energy. I just don't feel like it's worth it. Like especially in Winds of Change, the issue is you don't have enough area damage. That, like, to summarize, like I don't have to go through every skill, but Overload hits adjacents, fine. Unnatural can hit adjacent, but it only deals like 40 damage. Cry can hit area, does like almost 70 at this rank. Empathy is really good because very often the enemy backline is knocked down, crowd controlled, getting interrupted and disabled. So when you put empathy on like one of their warriors or something, it reduces their damage output, and they generally will kill themselves, so it's good. Shatter Hex is amazing. Obviously, 108 armor ignoring to nearby is very strong. And then Healing Seed is fantastic on a Mesmer. So it's pretty strong. The reason why this isn't S tier, in my opinion, is because it's very good, but even though Psychic Instability is very strong, generally speaking, Unsteady Ground does the same thing, except it can knock down for longer. The reason for that is that, let's say enemy backliners attack, right? So like after they're done casting spells using skills, they'll just auto attack. Use Unsteady Ground on enemy backline. If they are attacking the first time it hits, they get knocked down for 2 seconds. They get back up. If they start attacking again, they get knocked down for 2 seconds. I think it's possible that they can get knocked down a third time if it like all happens perfectly, but generally you're looking at 2 knockdowns. And 2 knockdowns with Unsteady Ground is 4 seconds, which is comparable to Psychic Instability. However, this also does 150 damage while it's knocking them down and hits nearby as well. So this is like probably even better. The only way it's not is because it takes 2 seconds to cast. So the Mesmer is like the opener, right? It has Psychic Instability and Cry to disable and interrupt the enemy's first couple of skills and spells to allow the Ellie to then come in and just like start pounding them into the dirt with damage. So that's kind of like the way I use this. And I use Cry Frustration on my Ellie to contribute to interrupt spam, because that is good, but you really miss Mistrust, Wastrel skills, Spiritual Pain, all the skills that like Mesmer relies on for like that AoE damage for Mesmer Way. So Mesmer is A tier. It's almost like A plus tier. Like I want to say it's almost A plus tier. Like this build right here is pretty good, but I think this build is just much better. So in hard mode, this can knock down a group of attacking enemies. Like let's say like the enemies have like 3 assassins, 2 warriors running in. This can shut all of them down for like 2 or 3 seconds, or even up to 5 seconds. This can shut down things attacking you and backliners. This can shut down backliners if they try to scatter, which they will, and then they'll get knocked down in it. This can just knock down adjacent for 105 damage into Bed of Coals, which is 7-second burn plus 150 damage, then Flare spam. So like this is control and damage. This is basically the Mesmer Way of factions only. So this is A tier, but it's definitely not S tier. It doesn't have the damage that Mesmer usually has. So yeah. All right, so I keep flagging her on accident. All right, let's take the Ellie. Ellie is S tier. You probably saw it coming based on the explanation. The reason it's S tier is because of a few key skills. Basically, these first 5 skills are what make it S tier. Churning Earth in hard mode in Winds of Change can completely knock down, like if an enemy balls up, because they spread out and then ball up, this can completely knock down a group of enemies just by itself, just if they try to move, for up to 6 seconds if it like works out like the way it can. Also, if you run Earthbind with this, it generally will knock them down for 6 seconds, because then you have 2-3 second knockdowns. So what will happen is, let's say they're running towards you, or like they're running towards your backline, they'll catch a knockdown on the first like trigger of damage, and then after 3 seconds they get up, and then if they try to scatter or move again, they get knocked down again for 3 seconds. So this is very strong. It can also be used on backliners to, like, enemies try to scatter to avoid it. They get knocked down into it usually. Same thing with Unsteady Ground. Both of these are great. There's no good illusion magic skills. This is it. It's Earth magic in this game, or in this circumstance. So you don't have Ineptitude, you don't have Wandering Eye. You have Clumsiness, but without Ineptitude and Wandering Eye, a Clumsiness build is just like not good. So let's look at Illusion really quick, just to kind of go over why. I don't have all the Illusion skills, but I have most of the good ones, like Arcane Conundrum, Clumsiness, Shared Burden. Your best elite skill is Shared Burden, which isn't bad, but there's just better elites. Like this is just better, because it kills things. You're trying to kill things, right? So that's why it's better. And Ineptitude is good because it blinds and kills things. So yeah, this is your anti-physical. This is also anti-backliner. Like, this is a very versatile build. It can mess up enemy backline. It can mess up any balled group of enemies. It can mess up pretty much anything. And then also it has Cry of Frustration for even more control. So it has like 4 heavy control skills. And then Bed of Coals can scatter on its own. So that's like control light. It's like not exactly like explicitly control, but it is in a way. But this is easily a really good build. There's other builds too. Let me go to manage. Let me see if I can find some. I have like some random builds that are like test ideas, so you might see some strange builds. This build actually isn't bad. This Assassin's Promise build. These are all factions only skills. The idea behind this build is it resets your Meteor, your Firestorm, and your Churning Earth. So this is another S tier build that's very strong. And there's other builds like this. Let me see what else I have. This is a solo farming build for Oni farm, but it's kind of sucks. It doesn't really make that much money per hour. This build isn't bad. Breath of Fire is only really good on a player because you can manage your exhaustion well. The idea behind this build is it's a support. You run Arcane Conundrum to support your Mesmers so they have easier interrupts, and it also greatly reduces the effectiveness of enemy backline. So it helps your Mesmer get better, like more consistent Cry of Frustration interrupts and Psychic Instability interrupts. That's the one build I just went over. This is a weird assassin build. Let's see. Feather Farmer. Alright, so here was like a more standard build that I was running. You can switch out Breath of Fire with Meteor. It just has really good damage. So if you wanted to have more damage and less control, you just get rid of Unsteady Ground and throw in like Double Dragon. Let's see what else. This is a build on my actual main account. This is like a pretty basic build, just has some energy management in it. Nothing too crazy. This one's okay. Just has Shadow Arts for tanking. Has decent damage output. This is a random Winds of Change or a random Starburst build that's meh. Starburst isn't as good as it is. This is the best Starburst build I came up with. The idea behind it is you have access to blind and cracked armor, burn and damage from Starburst, and energy management. Tanai's Wind does like 100 damage plus interrupt, and then Inferno does like 100 something damage. You can maintain energy with Lightning Arrow, which procs off of cracked armor. You have Shadow Step, Death's Charge, and Dark Escape for tanking, and then some passive healing and energy management off of Aura. Aura can be replaced with Res Seg, or whatever you want to run. But those are some examples of some Ellie builds, but this is like close to one of the better ones. And okay, then we have Monk, because Monk is here. I'll leave Monk in B tier. Why is Monk in B tier? Energy problems, tanking problems. While things like Spirit Bond are good, an Ellie or a Necro could just run this build and just have better energy management just by having like Soul Reaping or energy storage. So, and I have to like really push the Monk like with like Divine Boons so it can actually heal substantial amounts. And Life Sheath isn't the best elite. It's not a bad elite, but it's just not that good. But yeah, that's my rating for the metagame. You have Necro, Rit, and Ellie in S tier. You have Mesmer in A tier, maybe even closer like A plus tier. I don't want to put it in S tier because it doesn't I've never been carried by the Mesmers so far. I'll put it in like A plus tier, I guess, because it's definitely better than A tier, but it's not like so good it's broken. It's just really strong. In the actual metagame, obviously, it's broken. So Ellie is broken because a single Ellie can wipe out a huge group of enemies with this build alone, just because of all the knockdown spam and the AoE damage. It just all adds up over time. And then Rit is S tier because of BIP healer builds, and Minion Master builds, which in this metagame are very strong. And then, of course, Rit is S tier because Soul Twisting. Without Soul Twisting, this wouldn't even be possible. And it's S tier even in normal gameplay. And of course you have this Soul Twisting damage build, which is actually quite strong, and then you have the Signet of Spirits builds. Warrior I would put probably in C tier because of the energy management issues, and it just ends up being like a burden. It can tank, which is nice, but you're better off having offense than defense in Winds of Change. You're better off killing enemies as fast as you possibly can before they just deal damage to you than having tanking. Same thing with Warrior and Assassin and Ranger. I would put those in like C tier. They just don't really bring enough to the table. Now as a player, Assassin is probably S tier because it just gives you access to constant save yourselves. As a player, Warrior is probably A plus tier because of save yourself spam. Have a build specifically that can do that. Let me just find it. Should only take a second to find. Is this it? Yeah, this is it. So here's a warrior build that's not bad. You can get rid of strength and just increase tactics so that when you cancel defensive stance with frenzy, you get a ton of adrenaline, which helps fuel save yourselves. You can't really run like you will die or anything like that for adrenaline spiking because you'll just run out of energy and you're not going to get bipped as a warrior unless you switch to staff, which is awkward. Like if you just randomly switch to staff to catch a bip, because you don't get bipped unless you're a caster class or you have a staff, so you can't run too much energy, like too many energy demanding things. But yeah, this is pretty close. I would switch this out for tactics, though. That's what I ran on my Ellie. I run 100 blades build on my Ellie for the final mission because I just constantly keep getting power blocked, even through interrupt prevention, which disables your skills and makes you do nothing. So, yeah, I've been trying out a bunch of different builds for the final confrontation. But yeah, this is the factions only metagame for heroes. I'll do one for players after this, but thanks for checking this out, and I'll see you in the next one.